When you're giving a presentation, it is very important to look the audience in the eyes. You cannot afford to read from a paper. You cannot afford to read a PowerPoint that is full of text. You need to constantly look at your audience so they can see you think and you can observe them and in a way communicate to them. Doing that is hard. It is especially hard if English is not your mother tongue and you have to present in English. The purpose of this lecture is to try to give you a series of tools that will prepare you for giving such a presentation. My name is Shai Dotan. I'm Associate Professor of International and Public Law at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law. The purpose of this series of lectures is to help you improve your English. Now, throughout this series of lectures, I explain how important it is that you think in English and speak in English all the time. So what I'm going to say next may come as a surprise for you. When you're preparing for a lecture, especially a lecture that is less than half an hour, where you can get away without using a PowerPoint and remember all your ideas, in these lectures, I want you to write your notes in your mother tongue. And I want you to do that for a specific reason. Even though you're losing a little bit of a practice of English, which is important, you are able to write your ideas and put them on paper without getting accustomed to particular words and phrases. The worst thing you can do as you speak in English is reciting something that you wrote before. This is why you're not allowed to memorize the lecture at all. Memorization is a terrible idea for several reasons. First, it's incredibly, unbelievably time consuming and very, very difficult to do. Second, if you memorize very hard, there's a good chance that you get a block when you speak, and when you start to freeze, and the lecture will be a disaster. And even if you manage to do it in a reasonable amount of time, because you have an amazing memory, and you don't block, the audience is going to see that. They're going to look in your eyes, and they're going to see that you're reciting something that is going through in your head, going over notes that you memorize, and that's something very bad. So you don't do that. So why not write the notes in English? If you write the notes in English, you're going to use certain phrases that you're going to repeat while you speak. Instead, if you write your notes in Danish, German, French, Hebrew, any other language that you know better than English, first of all, you can do it very, very fast, because it's your mother tongue. You write it very fast, you write it very well. It's much easier to do. But that's not the main reason. The main reason I want you to do that is because if you do that, then you will use different words to express the same ideas. And then when you speak, you are going to have to think about these ideas for the first time. And then two things are going to happen. One thing is you're going to speak slower, and that's already a major advantage, because people who listen to you speak slower are going to understand you better. And the second thing is everybody in the audience is going to see that you're thinking about the ideas and the words on the spot. While you're talking to them, you are talking to them instead of just repeating something that you memorize. So write your notes in your mother tongue. That's a very good idea. Now, the way I usually operate is I would try to use writing on a file in my mother tongue, which is Hebrew. I would write about a page per 5 minutes. I would put a title every section of a lecture. The division of a lecture to the sections is very important. And then the division of every section to paragraph is also very important. Why is it so important? Because maybe you have interruptions during the lecture and you have to kind of jump between the paragraphs. Or maybe even if there's no interruption, you missed a paragraph and you need to recreate the order of a lecture to begin with. So being able to organize the lecture to section and to different paragraphs within each section guarantees that your lecture is going to have a good structure that you can repeat even if you make a mistake and even if you have interruptions. So you write this about 5 minutes per page. Write your ideas in your own words. Use whatever technique you want in order to improve the notes, like bold and underline and highlighting, to make things jump out to your eyes. And then you have a preparation, and then I want you to put this preparation to the side and look at it as little as possible. Now, why do I want you to put these notes to the side? Because research has shown that recall is 11 times faster than repetition. So if you're going to read these notes that you wrote, even though they're not written in English and you're going to use the ideas in another language, that's a good start. But you have to read it 11 times and you would still not reach the level of you trying to recall what you wrote and searing it into your long-term memory. So I want you to take these pages, put them aside, and then I want you to put a timer, and I want you to start walking around the room and telling the lecture with real high voice, out loud. I want you to do that because that's the best way for you to remember the lecture. If you do that, you put the timer for the time that you have to do the lecture, and you try to aim at this time, hopefully even a minute or two less than that, and this will get you ready to the lecture in the best possible way. Now, as you do that, your practice may not be perfect because you're still not very well accustomed to the lecture. So one of the things that could happen is that you're going to miss something. And then what I usually do when I do that, try to make some kind of a physical cue that will help you remember where it happened. Do this. I notice that I missed something. I snap my fingers. And then what I'm going to do now is, instead of stopping the lecture, doing something to stop the flow of a narrative that is going through my mouth, I continue and I manage to fix it without the audience noticing that. So the snap of my fingers is something that is out of a character. You're not now in the lecture. It's something that would be probably going in your head. And everything else is in character. You're speaking as if you were in a real lecture, and you don't want in a real lecture your audience to know that you made a mistake. So what you do is you just keep talking, and you find a good opportunity when the context is right to slip in the idea that you missed. That's exactly what you need to do. And that's the most crucial part of the lecture practice. You must get ready to the point where you make a mistake, even in front of the audience, and you'll be able to get back into track. This mistake can be because you forgot it. It can be because somebody's phone was ringing. It can be because there's a question. Some presentations there's questions from the audience. And then you have to go back on track and repeat this problem. The second problem that can happen is what I call a corner. A corner is a situation where you're talking about the topic and you are talking about it in the right order, but something wrong still happens. The problem is that you are starting to speak too much about the topic, way more time than you decide to go to it. Usually what happens is you get into circles. You start to explain a complicated point that you could have just glided over, and then when you start to speak about it for half a minute, you see it's unclear, so you spend another minute talking about it, and then you just have to remind yourself, there is a corner here. Say the word corner in your head. Corner, I made a mistake here, I will not make it again when I speak. You will see that in a lecture in law, many times, it's the corners that take the most time. These are the cases where you put yourself in a corner, you put yourself in a situation with some predicament that can be avoided, and you overspeak about something that you should have not tried to speak about too much. So remember the finger snap, I made a mistake, I missed something, the corner, and trying to walk around the room so you feel very free and flexible to let your ideas roll and you speak. After you finish this presentation, I want you to open your computer and I want you to write a review of your presentation, what you just did. How much time did it take you? Did I go over the time limit and the time around? Was I speaking too little? You want to aim for about, let's say, 1 minute or 2 minutes underneath the maximum time that is allotted to you. How many corners did I have and why? How many cases did I miss the case? And did I manage to put the paragraph in at a later point correctly? And by the way, you may notice that if you made something that looks like a mistake and you put a paragraph in a different place in your plan, this place is actually better. It's more fitting to the context. So you go back to your plan, which you wrote in your mother tongue, you change it up, and the next time you'll be ready, and you probably will not be making this mistake because the order is better, and it will help you to follow that. How many times should you practice in this way? My recommendation is, as a beginner, always practice at least 10 times. Practice until 10 times, and I want you to spread those times. So I want you to start practicing at least a week ahead. So if you do a week ahead, you want to do a presentation or two every day. You could add in some unique presentations, like, for example, talking to the computer and type and recording yourself so you can listen to yourself, talking to a friend, talking in front of a mirror. But it's very important that these 10 standard presentations of you going around the room and speaking and avoiding any mistakes and improving yourself and writing a review will be put in. Now, this may sound like a lot, but it's a very important thing. That's really a key thing in your career, especially as a beginner. And you have to be ready, and the best way to be ready is to practice a long time ago, because remember, what you're doing is you're searing the lecture into your long-term memory so that you're able to speak about it immediately. No matter how tired you are, even if you're on a conference, you haven't slept before, you didn't have time to review it in the day before the lecture, it's still there. And if you do it like this, you will be very surprised. Sometimes you will give a presentation, it's going great, then you are thinking about other things and working about other things for half a year, for a year, and then you have to prepare again. Preparation is a fraction of the time. You somehow miraculously remember the topic, you go to your notes, you prepare, do 4 presentations like this, and you are ready to go. So it's a very effective technique that I recommend that you use. As you get more experience using this technique, you may be able to make less presentations before every important presentation. You may also be able to practice it in your head. So I would sometimes just, even walking on the street, I have 20 minutes walk. As I was walking, I would be practicing the lecture in full, or I was sitting in an airplane, I would practice it, or sometimes the first thing I would do in the morning when I wake up before a workshop. First thing I do in the morning, just stay in bed and just run through this entire ideas through my head. But as a beginner, it's very important that you will speak, so you can hear yourself speak, hear your own voice, and get yourself ready for a presentation. Another trick that I recommend that you use is once you go to a conference, usually there are several people presenting before and after you, so there's a lot of dead hours where you have to be in a place, but you can't try to think about your own presentation, because otherwise, if you don't think about your presentation in the hour before that, it may be difficult to recall the ideas, especially if you're very tired and you're flooded with ideas all the time. So what I do is I would take a piece of paper and I would kind of say, I'm now shorthanding my lecture. What I would do is I would kind of write a word here and a word there from the lecture very, very fast. So it would be like, I'm lecturing about reputation in international law. So the reputation of states, I would write reputation of states, and then I would jump to a few sentences later, and then I would write something like low discount rate is a predictor of reputation, and so on. Jump from one idea to the other. Now, why do I find this useful? Because first of all, you're jumping in ideas in the order in which you prepared in advance, and that's exactly the most important thing, so that you get the order right. And the second is you're actually using your hand. So you're writing one word here, one word there, in a terrible handwriting that is hardly readable, but you are moving your hand in a conscious way, and this, I think, does put the ideas deeper into your head. Especially if you're very tired, you can use that technique as well. If you're not as impatient as me, and you are really able to dedicate your hour before the lecture, you just have to be in the room, you can even write not completely in shorthand. So write basically something close to your lecture notes, better handwriting, readable sentences. That's fine. I'm not speaking about it negatively. I'm just saying, even if you just basically make a cartoonish version of the parts in the lecture, this will still be fine. And the final thing I want to say is that all through this process, you are putting these ideas deeper and deeper into your head. You're playing the probable order in which they should appear. Just remember, one of the main reasons that you use in a presentation is to improve your paper. So once in a while, go to the paper itself, and if it's not published yet, as usually is the case, if it's a work in progress, you can try to improve it as well. So this would give you not only the tools to give a great presentation, which can be very important for your career, but also the tools to improve your research significantly, which can be just as important.